what's up guys? Nick with Alex Training Group. This is going to be part one of the rifle setup series, and we're going to be talking about optics. All right, so if we're thinking about what optic we should get for our particular rifle, the first thing that we have to ask ourselves, in my opinion, is what are we going to be doing with this particular rifle, right? Whatever you're going to be doing with the gun is going to dictate what optic you put on it, okay? Is it going to be a home defense rifle? Is it going to be a night vision specific rifle? Is it going to be something that you use to shoot long distance a lot of the time, etc.? So whatever you're going to be doing with it is going to dictate what optic you put on it, right? Be very honest with yourself with this, right? Because there's no such thing as a do-all type gun, okay? You can get kind of close, and I'll show you one here in a second, but I promise you it is not going to do everything as well as a setup specifically optimized for whatever it is that you want to do with it, right? So let's talk about home defense guns first. I like rifles for home defense personally, so this is a great option in my opinion for a home defense gun. This is a great optic for a home defense gun, right? I like red dots on home defense guns. Could you use an LPVO for home defense? Absolutely, 100%. This particular setup right here could do home defense. But the thing that you have to ask yourself is, in the middle of the night, if I need this thing, do I want to have to deal with eye relief? Do I want to have to deal with finding that eye relief in the middle of the night with whatever it is that you have going on, right? In my opinion, I don't want to have to deal with that, and so I pick a red dot. Some of these LPVOs have great eye relief, but just understand that none of them will ever replace a red dot, okay? There's no eye relief on a red dot. There is on any LPVO that you get, right? So that's kind of one of the cons of the LPVOs, but we'll go over them here in a second. This one is the EOTech EXPS-3, okay? EOTech is a great option. One of the cons of the EOTechs is a really low battery life, okay? So if you turn this thing on before you go to bed, say you stow this thing next to your bed because it's a home defense gun. If I turn this thing on before I go to bed, I would not expect this to be on in the middle of the night if I needed it, okay? A couple reasons here. Depending on which button you push, okay, it has an auto shut off. So if you push the down button, it will shut off in 4 hours. If you push the up button, it'll shut off in 8 hours. And considering that it has a kind of a low battery life, I wouldn't expect this thing to be on at all. Okay, so if you're using an EOTech for a home defense setup, I think they're great. Just understand that they have a low battery life. If you don't dig that, there's a lot of options with really high battery life, okay? A lot of the Hollow Suns these days have really high battery life, and they're really great options too, really robust. And then if you don't want a Hollow Sun, if you want to spend a little bit more, you can get aim points, right? Aim points are known for having great battery life. T1, T2, Comp M5, all of those have a great battery life to them. Another red dot here, okay? This is an option that I use for I use this for, can't talk today, night vision a lot of the time, okay? This thing is optimized for night vision, this setup. But today we're just talking about optics, right? So we'll go over what's on this. So this is a Leupold LCO, and it's on a Unity riser. It also has an Aimpoint 3X-C in a Unity mount behind it, okay? Why do I need a riser with night vision? Well, if you ever plan on using your dot to aim with your night vision, you're gonna want some sort of riser, okay? Could it be done without the riser? Yeah, but then you really have to jam your cheek into the stock. And what I have found personally is my tubes end up bumping either the charging handle or the buffer tube because it's so difficult for me to get my tubes that low. And so like a 5/8 riser like this Unity one to me is perfect, right? You can cheek the gun, have your tube sitting right behind it, and it works out really well. Why would I have a magnifier on this, right? I don't use this magnifier pretty much at all for night vision stuff. They're not great for night vision in my opinion. I use this for just seeing a little bit better during the day, right? If I'm taking this rifle out to shoot it during the day, say I'm hunting or whatever, and I want to see a little bit better, this thing comes in handy a lot, okay? Now, one of the misconceptions I think with magnifiers is people think that they are for long range use. They are not, okay? This setup right here is not utilized for long range much at all. Could you do it? Yeah, but it's not the best, right? There's other things that we can use for long range that are a lot better than this, okay? What I want you guys to think about with magnifiers is using it to see better at shorter ranges, okay? 25, 35, 40 yards, something small, okay? Something that is maybe small and you don't have a whole lot of light and it's very hard to see with just a red dot, or very hard to aim and hit with just a red dot. These magnifiers make stuff like that really, really easy, okay? Again, could you shoot long distance with this setup here? Yeah, but it's not really optimized for that, okay? All this thing is here for is to see a little bit better at closer distances, okay? Let's get into LPVOs here. Got two LPVOs here, and I use these two setups for kind of sort of the same thing, but one gets shot long distance more than the other. I do shoot these long distance quite a bit, like both of them, but one of them gets shot long distance more than the other, right? And that's gonna be this 14.5 here with this 1-10, okay? This is a Vortex 1-10. I think these are great for an LPVO setup that you wanna use for shooting longer distance a lot of the time, okay? This is a 14.5 again. I use this for shooting out to 600 yards quite a bit, and I think that this 1-10 is great for it. The reticle in this 1-10 I think is really awesome for shooting longer distance, right? Why is that? Well, each mill has the number by it, right? So I'm not having to look at the mills, look at the mill hashes in the scope, and then having to count, right? This thing just has the numbers by it. So say I'm gonna shoot 600 yards, I crank this thing up to 10, I get in my position, whatever that is. I go down to 4 mils, put 4 mils on it, and I know for a fact that that's 4 mils because there's a number 4 by it, etc., right? If I'm gonna shoot 300 yards, I know for a fact that, you know, my 1 mil hold is right there because you could see that it's 1 mil, okay? It's very, very easy to use for longer distances, okay? This Kale's K16i has a great reticle in it too, but to me it's not as optimized for shooting longer ranges simply because there's no numbers by each of the hash marks in the reticle. So when I want to hold, right, say I'm gonna crank this thing up to 6, go to 550 yards, and I know that I need to hold, I think this thing is like 4.5 or 5 mils at that distance. Doesn't matter. Anyway, if I want to hold 5 mils, I'm gonna have to count inside the reticle to find the 5 mils, and I've found it to be a little kind of cumbersome, you know, when you're trying to shoot that kind of range. So if you're gonna shoot longer ranges a lot of the time, pick a scope or an LPVO that has the reticle that's set up for it, right? And in my opinion, this Vortex 1-10 here is great for it. Okay, let's talk about mounts. I'm a big fan of these Badger mounts, okay? One of the biggest reasons is because they are so modular, okay? So I can add a red dot on the side of these things. I can buy a dope card and add that on the side of this thing, right? So I can have a dope card that basically folds out and have all my holds written on it. Super awesome. And to my knowledge, this is the only company out there that's doing that. The red dot mounts I think are awesome. They mount right up to the scope mount. They make it a really nice, light, tight little package here. Another thing about their red dot mounts is Badger understands that your red dot has to be centered over the bore. To me, this is a huge deal, right? Not all offset mounts are gonna be created equal, and what I mean by that is some of the offset mounts, specifically the turrets on your offset mount, might be to the left or the right of the bore. Now, could you get it zeroed? Yes, you could potentially get that optic zeroed, but what you're gonna have to understand is inside and outside of your zero, you're gonna have more than just a height over bore or holding over, okay? You're gonna have to hold over and one side to the other, okay? So it'd be kind of like if this scope was mounted over here, okay? We could absolutely get this gun zeroed, but the problem with it is inside of my zero, I would have to hold high and left because of this scope sitting off to the left. Same exact thing goes for the red dots. So, or offset mounts for red dots. So if you're looking for an offset mount, just make sure that that thing is centered over the bore. And if it isn't, you could still use it, but just understand that you're gonna have some sort of wonky hold where you're gonna have to hold left or right and high, okay? The height that I like on these mounts, these are 1.7 height mounts. I really dig the 1.7 height mounts. I ran 1.93 height mounts for a long time. The thing that I started to not like about the 1.93 mounts, especially with this Vortex 1-10, is on 10X with this particular scope, the eye relief is a little tight, okay? And if I have a 1.93 and I'm trying to shoot longer distance, 500, 600, 700 yards, what I started to experience is a couple things. Number one, it's very hard to get a consistent chin weld, right? To have consistent eye relief. And number two, you start to experience a little bit of parallax in that scope. Every LPVO is gonna have a little bit of parallax, okay? There's, to my knowledge, I don't know of any LPVO that you can adjust the focus or parallax. So you have to make sure that your eyeball is directly behind the reticle when you're shooting longer distance. So to me, the 1.7 height mount, especially in conjunction with 1/4 inch cheek riser, is perfect when you want to shoot a little bit longer distance, especially with this 1-10. So why would you want a little bit higher mount, right? Because a 1.7 height is not a 1.54 or 1.52 or whatever. It is a little bit higher. So why would you want a little bit higher mount and then throw a cheek riser on there? So one thing that the higher mount gives you is a nice heads up shooting position, okay? One thing that the cheek riser gives you is a really consistent cheek weld, okay? And that's what you don't get with like a 1.93 without the cheek riser, okay? So to me, this is kind of best of both worlds. I'm not a huge fan of the 1.52 or the 1.54s just because of how much I need to cram my cheek into this, into the stock, and because of how much or how far forward my head needs to tip in order to see the dot, and I end up looking out the top of my ocular cavity. So, you know, the lower mounts might be good for shooting prone, stuff like that, but I've found, you know, shooting on the move, shooting off of barricades, I really, really like these 1.7 height mounts, especially in conjunction with a cheek riser, okay? First focal plane, second focal plane. Why would we need either one, right? So like, what's the difference? In my opinion, a 1-6 second focal plane, completely fine with me. Anything over, say like a 1-8, I kind of want a first focal plane. First focal plane, especially on these 1-10s, is very, very nice. So what's the difference, right? So the difference is on a first focal plane, as I crank up the magnification, the reticle itself gets bigger. So the mils or MOA or whatever it is in your scope, as you crank up on a first focal plane, stay true, all right? On a second focal plane, your reticle is essentially set usually at the highest setting, right? These K16Is, the reticle, the mils in this reticle are set at 6x. Now, if I crank down to 4x on a second focal plane and I need to use my holds, they are no longer true, okay? A mil is no longer a mil on 4x with this particular setup because it's second focal plane, and the mils are set at 6x on this, okay? With a first focal plane, this is a 1-10, but if I crank up to 4, with a first focal plane, the mils stay true all the time. So why would you want a first focal plane over a second focal plane? And like, why wouldn't you want a first focal plane on a 1-6? Well, typically on this 1-6, if I'm gonna be shooting longer distance, it's just gonna be cranked all the way up to 6, okay? 300 yards, 400 yards, 6x, okay? At 2x, or excuse me, at say 200 yards, it's still gonna be on 6x, all right? To me, there's just not a whole lot of need on a 1-6 to have first focal plane. So second focal plane is completely fine. Now, on the 1-10s or the 1-8s, the chances of me being on, say, 6x and having to use my holds are a little bit higher on these type setups, okay? So personally, I dig the first focal planes on the 1-8s, 1-10s, right? It makes a lot of sense to me to have a first focal plane on this. All right, so that's what I got for part one of the rifle setup series on optics. If you guys have any questions or think that I missed something, go ahead and drop a comment in the comments box below the video. I'll be happy to answer any of the questions that you got. If you want to know more about what I do, you can go to www.veloxtraininggroup.com. Again, Nick with Velox Training.